Velga Easker, and my work is predominantly on this wall and then that back wall also. And I work with things that people throw away and don't pay attention to. Canceled postage stamps and security envelopes, and currently a lot of my work is featuring coffee jackets, the sleeves on to-go coffee cups and the cups themselves. So I like, it's collage, paper assemblage, see what I can find in the material to make a really strong design. A lot of people wonder how I got into working with canceled postage stamps and security envelopes and coffee jackets. It's kind of an odd media to work with. Well, my degree is in art, and my interest is in art, but I searched around for a media that really suited me, and I hadn't really found one yet. And I had a day job downtown Cedar Rapids where I lived, and there was a contest being sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce to do some recycled art. And when I sit at my desk and I'm talking on the phone, I would fiddle with whatever, but I'd be fiddling with the envelopes. And I would notice the American flag stamp on the envelopes, which at the time was really graphic with the white and red stripes and the blue corner. I mean, it just stood out to me. So I started fiddling with that, and I would cut it apart and rearrange the pieces. And I don't even know how I got to starting that. But in any case, I made a small piece, arranging them there. And as it happened, I won the contest, and I won, I think, to have my hair done by a hairdresser downtown. Anyway, but that got me started in, oh, well, maybe this is something I can continue with, because it really was intriguing. And so I would start working with the canceled postage stamps, and I found that it suited me to work with something that people throw away, to see what I could do, take and play with it, and to make art, if you will, or to make something that's enjoyable to look at, or interesting, or says something. I'm actually an immigrant, came to this country when I was 7, and with my parents, and so I was used to making do, to not always buying something because you couldn't, but you sort of make do with what you had. So that of my beginnings and my nature, as well as the world of art and design and graphics, came together for me to discover that this is a media that I really enjoy working with. What I had to do with most postage stamps, they're often rectangular, and so I would find the most interesting part, like this is a whole stamp, and find a square, and then I would put, for instance, this stamp on point, quilter's term, I understand. And that would make, if I put it as this was the corner on point, it would make this kind of an interesting design, I thought. And then these other 3 images are, if I turned 4 of these squares of stamps together, then they would make a totally different image. And then over time, when you work with something, if you cut it at a diagonal, and then you have 2 pieces rather than just 1 piece, and then if you rearrange that, their design gets more intricate and richer, and with a lot more possibilities. So that's where I took off with the flag stamp, and then I would work on to other stamps too. This is just one example of that same Iowa stamp, where as I earlier worked with kind of the 9-patch quilt, that quilters, a term they use. It worked for me with the 9 squares and then a border like a miniature quilt. I'm not a quilter, but I've often admired quilting because early quilters, that's what they did too. They would take leftover pieces of fabric and put them together in a pleasing look, I would assume, that pleased them, and then patch it together, and then they had a useful piece, let's say a blanket that they could use for the bed. So that got me into postage stamps, and as you cut stamps out of envelopes, it's just interesting what you see and what you don't see. And to me, when somebody asks what's the most important lesson in art, and I think it's being able to see, to look, to see, because then you see possibilities, such as when I would be cutting the stamps from envelopes, then all of a sudden one day you kind of notice that the envelope itself has, as you can see through the window of this security envelope, has color and pattern, and all of a sudden it's just like fabric. And so I started incorporating the envelopes with the stamps to make richer designs and more full designs. These are two examples of that. These are just black and white, but they used to come in a lot more colors, but I think that's being reduced. When I say used to, I've been working with, started with this media, oh gosh, it's been over 20 years, and there's just so much to explore. And the more you explore, the more you find, the more fun it gets, and that's what I really enjoy. And as you're working with the material, of course, you're looking around and you're seeing other possibilities. You want to try something new, something kind of exciting and different. And I'll show you what I was working on next then. So the next thing, the next material, I had always been interested, I'm a coffee drinker, and I've always been interested in interesting coffee jackets. I'll show you a couple that really caught my eye. This one, this Peace Coffee, is a coffee shop, I think in St. Paul, Minnesota, and then this is another one from a motel. It's cute with a collar and buttons. So I'd been saving these for some time, but I never knew, and I'm a saver, and I never knew about doing anything with them. But then how sort of the light dawns one day, I started picking them up, and in particular, I guess I started because the Starbucks one was, there were a lot of them around and a lot of possibilities. So I was looking at the mermaid and playing around and trying to decide, so what can I do with this as opposed to just saving it. And I've done some talks about my work and some workshops, so I had this sort of sheet prepared that explains, and I'll give you a quick look at that. So here's part of the coffee sleeve, and if I cut it in half and then cut it in half again, I have this long rectangular piece with sort of a focus at this point. So I took 4 of those and then put those points together, and then I end up getting a design. They're kaleidoscopic in nature, I think, but there's a point that's of interest, and then it sort of goes out from there. And if I took this lower piece and put 4 of them together, again with that being the point of interest, then I come up with a whole different kind of square design. And you can just start playing from there, and that, I swear, that is really the fun in just seeing how far you can take something, that's has only one purpose: to not burn your hands when you're carrying your coffee, and then many people toss it. You know, hopefully they might recycle because it's paper, but anyway, so that's what I've really found is the fun of that. And because this is a coffee jacket or coffee sleeve, also made me think of origami shirts. So I started folding them also in to make designs. later I can show you maybe where, when you take these shirts and then put 4 of them together, that they make a really interesting graphic design also. Another Starbucks sleeve for a time was this small mermaid image, and I would do the same thing. I would cut it in half and then in fourths, and then take one of those rectangles and then put them on point, and how you can get different designs with that, and just continue playing around. And of course you need, in order to make a design of any substance, it takes a number of sleeves. And once my friends were aware of that this is what I was doing, then they would collect them as they traveled. And I had some really good friends in St. Paul who, when he retired from being a dentist, it was his mission, I think, for a month or two. He hopped on his bike, and then he would drive to one coffee shop and then to another, just to save these for me. It's just some really dear friends who have some energy and interest in the arts who help out. And that's the same kind of thing that happened with the postage stamps, that friends who knew that I was interested in doing that kind of artwork and needed more raw material, they would save that for me and send them to me. There was, I had an exhibit, kind of an early exhibit in Cedar Rapids, and about using other materials as well as the cancel postage stamps. And then I got a call from this lady who had seen the exhibit, and she said, I have some material I think you might be interested in, see what you can do with that. And so we said that we would meet in the parking lot of this grocery store. And I said, I have this kind of a car, and she has that kind of a car, because we had never met. And so we met in this parking lot, and she gave me a bag full of just interesting materials with stamps too. It almost felt clandestine because we were meeting in the parking lot. But that's been part of my enjoyment in working with the material I work with, is really the people connection, the communication, because it really goes to the heart of what people often feel, and they like to contribute to something that they feel good about. And this is the piece that I made in my process photographs, in how I start out and put together one of my smaller 9x9 inch pieces. And this features, I had talked earlier about the coffee sleeves, coffee jackets, and this features cups. And they come from, some of these are from the coffee jackets, but some of them are from cups. And I'll show you a couple of examples. This is one where I see there's a coffee cup that came from a to-go coffee cup, and I'll take a look at that, and I have a template that I use because that keeps them more uniform with what I'm doing right now. So I would place the template on the cup and see if that works, if it's an image that I like, and if it has the effect that I want to achieve. And another kind of common cup that you might see, this is styrofoam. And again, I would use my template process to see if that would work. So that's a whole nother, I could say, media. This is a cup from, here in Lansing, we have a pretty new coffee shop, which is very just beautiful woodwork inside. They rehabbed an old building, and they have really good coffee and baked goods and lunches. So this is their cup, and that template I could use or maybe not, I don't know. The cup is really larger, but in any case, that's how I would explore other possibilities and use the to-go coffee cup as well as the coffee jackets for my media. What you're looking at here is a graduation invitation postcard that was intended to be sent for our nephew's 18-year-old daughter who was going to graduate from high school. And she was planning on having a big high school graduation party. This is kind of a typical photographs of her, 2 different poses. And then we have the back, another photograph with all the information on there. And of course, this year with the COVID-19 virus, as everybody knows, that high school graduation party in June was not to be held. So it was rescheduled for later in August, and my nephew calls and says, Velga, we have these 100 postcards that are useless now. Do you think you can do something with them? And what's really fun is that I get those kind of invitations to see if I can do something with whatever material they might be thinking about. Some years ago, a woman who I did not know called and had a proposal for me. She had material, her daughter was living in Japan, and she went to visit. They had a wonderful time together, and she had some paper that she had collected while visiting her daughter in Japan, and so she was wondering if I could do something with them. And I selected out of that 2 postcards, and I made 2 pieces, and she was really, really happy with that. It's out of my everyday realm, but I love the challenge to see if I can do something with them. So this postcard, if you can see, it's in process. So I'm taking, so far, just images from these 100 postcards. They're 2-sided, and I'm featuring an image of Emma, the 18-year-old, and I'm doing what I tend to do in just cutting and reassembling pieces. She has garden vintage kind of featured, and so I tend to cut areas and then find the point and arrange that telescopic appearing square with those 4 points to see what kind of designs I can make. But so mainly I was just illustrating this as you never know what you get challenged with to see what you can do with. And it really is great because it stretches you, and to see how far you can take another object that people were going to throw away. And this is how far I've gotten with the piece. What I'm enjoying is finding these smaller squares that come together as the elements of the larger piece. I had this one where Emma is featured, and another one with her, and there's a lot of greenery in her postcards, so I'm seeing this as sort of a garden with flowers, and she's a sweet gal, so I'm thinking that is a general idea, theme. My problem is, how do I make it all work together? I have similarity in color and context, but how can I make it interesting, joined together? I like where the 2020, her graduation year, the year of the virus, is holding it all together, and then her name around that. And within that, then I want things to be interesting and yet tell a story. I thought about maybe having purple as a background because there's some purple here, and that has a brightness to some of the squares. I know that wherever it ends up, I love these elements. I think they look great, and I think it will be a really nice piece. I really do. I have confidence that it will work out and will look great. Okay, so now I've kind of shown you some of the raw material in my studio, then we've come around to the gallery part of our space. And I did mention this coffee jacket with the buttons and the collar. So I used that piece in this finished piece where I've cut out, here's the center with the collar and the buttons. And here I've taken that coffee sleeve, I've taken off the back, scraped off the back in order to make it a thinner material, which I need to do in order to then origami fold that into these shirts. And that's this piece, and here's some of the cardboard effect of the inside insulation of the jackets. I'll use that as a design element. Pretty much whatever's there I will. And then this piece is also using coffee jackets and preparing them to fold them into origami shirts. This is really colorful. And then what I like to point out is when I put 4 shirts together at the sleeve part, then often the negative space makes an interesting design, and that's kind of part of the fun of playing with the elements and then seeing what comes out. And this third piece is also, obviously I'm enjoying the collar and the buttons. It's just displaying those and some of the other coffee jackets, some of the corrugated cardboard elements of the sleeves. And then this rocket donut shop, I think, is in St. Paul, coming from my friends in St. Paul. And on this wall, we have Ornament Kit Cards, and they're based on the small squares that I do. I started out with the cancel postage stamps and made a small design. And Fred came up with the idea then of reproducing that one square on how many sides? We got 6 sides, and that could then be made in a card shape that could be cut out to make an ornament, such as we have hanging up there. And there's multiple ones with different colors, and it was really a fun challenge for me then to come up with a design that would fit that size. As I started working with coffee jackets, then I started making some with that as the raw material too. So it's really been a fun experience, and people really enjoy just kind of seeing what you can do with the little things like stamps and coffee jackets. Well, thank you. Thank you for listening to me talk about my process, for what I really enjoy doing. Thank you for visiting my studio and my part of the gallery. I hope you get inspired. I hope that you really just look around at the world around you, and then you see the potential. It's there if you just look, if you just sort of slow down and look to see what's there and how things go together and how they can be made into something that's inspiring or just enjoyable, pleasant, fun, just to enrich your world and others too. So thank you. Thanks. And I hope that you enjoyed Fred's too, because his work is equally as inspiring and wonderful. Thank you.